Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, everybody. Thank you for joining my channel. My name is Aria, and today I'm going to be studying mental health. So the book that I'm going to be studying out of is Var Carlos Foundations of Psychiatric Mental Health and Nursing, a Clinical Approach, 8th edition. So I just pray that God will open the doors that need to be open and that he'll close the doors that need to be closed. In the name of Jesus Christ. And I pray that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. I bind up those things that'll cause you to fail. And I just pray that God will enlighten your understanding, that you all will do well, and that you'll pass the test. So I'm going to get all of my study materials here, and I'm going to get ready to study. Today I went to the store. I bought some highlighters. So I have some highlighters here, Office Hub. I love highlighters, y'all. So I got me some highlighters here. I'm going to be using these to study. All right. So just grab my study materials.
9. Therapeutic Communication. The clinical interview. Ideally, the patient decides and leads the content and direction of the clinical interview. The nurse employs communication skills and active listening to better understand the patient's situation. Preparing for the interview. Pace. Helping a person with an emotional or medical problem is rarely a straightforward task, and the goal of assisting a patient to Setting. Effective communication can take place almost anywhere. However, the quality of the interaction, whether in a clinic, a clinical unit, an office, or the patient's home, depends on the degree to which the nurse and patient feel safe. Establishing a setting that enhances feelings of security is important too. The therapeutic relationship. A healthcare setting, a conference room, or a quiet part of the unit that has relative seating. In all setting. Assuming the same height, either both sitting or both standing. Avoiding a face-to-face arrangement when possible. A 90 to 120 degree angle or side-by-side position may be less intense, and patient and nurse can look away from each other without discomfort. Providing safety and psychological comfort in terms of exiting the room. Do not position the patient between the nurse and the door, nor should you position yourself in such a way that the patient feels trapped in the room. Avoiding a desk barrier between the nurse and the patient. Introductions. In the orientation phase, students tell the patient who they are, what the purpose of the meeting is, and how long and at what time they will be meeting with the patient. Bring up the issue of confidentiality during the initial interview. Remember that all healthcare professionals must respect the private, personal, and confidential nature of the patient's communication except in the specific situations outlined earlier, e.g., harm to self or others, child abuse, elder abuse. Do not discuss what is discussed with staff and your clinical group in conference outside with others, no matter who they are, e.g., patient's relatives, news media, friends, etc. The patient needs to know that whatever is discussed will stay confidential unless permission is given for it to be disclosed. Refer to Chapter 8 to review the nurse's responsibilities in the orientation phase. Ask the patient how he or she would like to be addressed. This question conveys respect and gives the patient direct control over an important ego issue. Some patients like to be called by their last names while others prefer being on a first name basis with the nurse. Initiating the interview. Once you have made introductions, you can turn the interview over to the patient by using one of a number of open-ended questions or statements. Where should we start? Tell me a little about what has been going on with you. What are some of the stresses you have been coping with recently? Tell me a little about what has been happening in the past couple of weeks. Perhaps you can begin by letting me know what some of your concerns have been recently. Tell me about your difficulties. You can facilitate communication by appropriately offering leads, e.g., go on, making statements of acceptance, e.g., aha, or otherwise conveying interest. Tactics to avoid. Certain behaviors are counterproductive and should be avoided. For example, do not try to argue with, minimize, or challenge the patient. Keep focus on facts and the patient's perceptions. Give false reassurance. Make observations of the patient's behavior. Change is always possible. Interpret to the patient or speculate on the dynamics. Listen attentively, use silence, and try to clarify the patient's problem. Question or probe patients about sensitive areas they do not wish to discuss. Pay attention to nonverbal communication. Strive to keep the patient's anxiety to a minimum. Try to sell the patient on accepting treatment. Encourage the patient to look at pros and cons. Join in attacks patients launch on their mates, parents, friends, or associates. Focus on facts and the patient's perceptions. Be aware of nonverbal communication. Participate in criticism of another nurse or any other staff member. Focus on facts and the patient's perceptions. Check out serious accusations with the other nurse or staff member. Have the patient meet with the nurse or staff member in question in the presence of a senior staff member, clinician, and clarify perceptions. Helpful guidelines. Guidelines for conducting the initial interview are suggested by Meyer and Davis, 2010. In the interview, speak briefly. When you do not know what to say nothing. When in doubt, focus on feelings. Avoid advice. Avoid relying on questions. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. Keep the focus on the patient. Attending behaviors, the foundation of interviewing. Engaging in attending behaviors and actively listening are two key principles of counseling on which almost everyone can agree. Summers-Flanagan and Summers-Flanagan, 2013. Positive attending behaviors serve to open up communication and encourage free expression, whereas negative attending behaviors are more likely to inhibit expression. All behaviors must be evaluated in terms of cultural patterns and past experiences of both the interviewer and the interviewee. Eye contact. As previously discussed, cultural and individual variations influence a patient's comfort with eye contact. For some patients and interviewers, sustained eye contact is normal and comfortable. For others, it may be more comfortable and natural to make brief eye contact but look away or down much of the time. A general rule of communication and eye contact is that it is appropriate for nurses to maintain more eye contact when the patient speaks and less constant eye contact when the nurse speaks. Body language. Body language involves two elements, kinesics and proxemics. Kinesics is associated with physical characteristics such as body movements and postures. Facial expressions, eye contact or lack thereof, the way someone holds the head, legs, and shoulders, and so on convey a multitude of messages. A person who slumps in a chair, rolls the eyes, and sits with arms crossed in front of the chest can be perceived as resistant and unreceptive. On the other hand, a person who leans in slightly toward the speaker, maintains a relaxed and attentive posture, makes appropriate eye contact, makes hand gestures that are unobtrusive and smooth while minimizing the number of other movements, and who matches facial expressions to personal feelings or to the patient's feelings can be perceived as open to and respectful of the communication. Proxemics refers to the study of personal space and the significance of the physical distance between individuals. Proxemics takes into account that these distances may be different for different cultural groups. Intimate distance in the United States is up to 18 inches and is reserved for those we trust most and with whom we feel most safe. Personal distance 18 to 40 inches is for personal communications such as those with friends or colleagues. Social distance 4 to 12 feet applies to strangers or acquaintances, often in public places or formal social gatherings. Public distance 12 feet or more relates to public space, e.g., public speaking. In public space, one may hail another, and the parties may move about while communicating. Vocal quality. Vocal quality, or paralinguistics, encompasses voice loudness, pitch, rate, and fluency. Summers-Flanagan and Summers-Flanagan, 2013, report that vocal qualities can improve rapport, demonstrate empathy and interest, and add emphasis to words or concepts. Speaking in soft and gentle tones is apt to encourage a person to share thoughts and feelings, whereas speaking in a rapid, high-pitched tone may convey anxiety and create it in the patient. Consider, for example, how tonal quality can affect communication in a simple sentence like, I will see you tonight. 1. I will see you tonight. I will be the one who sees you tonight. 2. I will see you tonight. No matter what happens, or whether you like it or not, I will see you tonight. 3. I will see you tonight. Even though others are present, it is you I want to see. 4. I will see you tonight. It is definite, tonight is the night we will meet. Clinical supervision and debriefing. Communication and interviewing techniques are acquired skills. You will learn to increase these abilities through practice and clinical supervision. In clinical supervision, the focus is on your skills within the context of the nurse-patient relationship. The student and clinical faculty have opportunities to examine and analyze the nurse's feelings and reactions to the patient and the way they affect the relationship. Clinical supervision can occur in a one-to-one conversation or as part of a group discussion in post-conference. An increasingly popular method of providing clinical supervision is through debriefing. According to the National League of Nursing 2015, debriefing is such an excellent learning method that it should be incorporated into all clinical experiences. Debriefing refers to a critical conversation and reflection regarding an experience that results in growth and learning. Debriefing supports essential learning along a continuum of knowing what to, knowing how, and knowing why. Process recordings. A good way to increase communication and interviewing skills is to review your clinical interactions exactly as they occur. This process offers the opportunity to identify themes and patterns in both your own and your patient's communications. As students, clinical review helps you learn to deal with the variety of situations that arise in a clinical interview. Process recordings are written records of a segment of the nurse-patient session that reflect as closely as possible the verbal and nonverbal behaviors of both patient and nurse. Process recordings have some disadvantages because they rely on memory and are subject to distortions. However, you may find them to be useful in identifying communication patterns. Sometimes an observing clinician takes notes during the interview, but this practice may be distracting for both interviewer and patient. Some patients, especially those with a paranoid disorder, may resent or misunderstand the student's intent. Assigning process recordings is becoming less common in schools of nursing. Videotaping clinical simulations in a laboratory setting and subsequent debriefing are becoming the mainstay in nursing education. Psychiatric mental health simulation experiences are used for students to practice therapeutic communication along with other psychiatric nursing skills such as crisis management and medication administration. A wide range of patient problems such as alcohol and drug use problems, hallucinations, delusions, aggression, and cognitive impairment can be simulated safely in a laboratory setting. After the simulation, debriefing helps students realize what went right and what may have gone wrong. Table 9.4 gives an example of a process recording. Table 9.4. Example of a process recording. Nurse. Patient. Communication technique. Student's thoughts and feelings. Good morning, Mr. Long. Therapeutic. Giving recognition. Acknowledging a patient by name can enhance self-esteem and communicates that the patient is viewed as an individual by the nurse. I was feeling nervous. He had attempted suicide, and I didn't know if I could help him. Initially, I was feeling somewhat overwhelmed. Who are you, and where the devil am I? Gazes around with a confused look on his face, quickly sits on the edge of the bed. I am Ms. Rodriguez. I am a student nurse from the college, and you are at Mount Sinai Hospital. I would like to spend some time with you today. Therapeutic. Giving information. Informing the patient of facts needed to make decisions or come to realistic conclusions. Therapeutic. Offering self. Making oneself available to the patient. What am I doing here? How did I get here? Spoken in a loud, demanding voice. I felt a bit intimidated when he raised his voice. You were brought in by your wife last night after swallowing a bottle of aspirin. You had to have your stomach pumped. Therapeutic. Giving information. Giving needed facts so that the patient can orient himself and better evaluate his situation. Oh, yeah. Silence for 2 minutes. Shoulders slumped. Mr. Long stares at the floor and drops his head and eyes. I was uncomfortable with the silence, but because I didn't have anything useful to say, I stayed with him in silence for the 2 minutes. You seem upset, Mr. Long. What are you thinking about? Therapeutic. Making observations. He looks sad. Therapeutic. Giving broad openings in an attempt to get at his feelings. I began to feel sorry for him. He looked so sad and helpless. Yeah, I just remembered. I wanted to kill myself, said in a low tone almost to himself. Oh, Mr. Long, you have so much to live for. You have such a loving family. Non-therapeutic. Defending. Non-therapeutic. Introducing an unrelated topic. I felt overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say. His talking about killing himself made me nervous. I could have said, you must be very upset, verbalizing the implied, or, tell me more about this, exploring. What do you know about my life? You want to know about my family. My wife is leaving me, that's what. Faces the nurse with an angry expression on his face and speaks in loud tones. Again, I felt intimidated by his anger, but now I linked it with his wife's leaving him, so I didn't take it as personally as I did the first time. I didn't know. You must be terribly upset by her leaving. Therapeutic. Reflective. Observing the angry tone and content of the patient's message and reflecting back the patient's feelings. I really felt for him, and now I thought that encouraging him to talk more about this could be useful for him. Key points to remember. Knowledge of communication and interviewing techniques is the foundation for developing any nurse-patient relationship. Goal-directed professional communication is referred to as therapeutic communication. Communication is a complex process. Our communication model has 5 parts: stimulus, sender, message, medium, and receiver. Feedback is a vital component of the communication process for validating the accuracy of the sender's message. A number of factors can minimize, enhance, or otherwise influence the communication process: culture, language, knowledge level, noise, lack of privacy, presence of others, and expectations. There are verbal and nonverbal elements in communication. Verbal communication consists of all the words a person speaks. Nonverbal communication consists of the behaviors displayed by an individual, in addition to the actual content of speech. Nonverbal communication is particularly useful in understand feelings and attitudes. Communication has 2 levels: the content level, verbal speech, and the process level, nonverbal behavior. When content is congruent with process, the communication is said to be healthy. When the verbal message is incongruent with the communicator's actions, the message is ambiguous. Cultural background, as well as individual differences, has a great deal to do with what nonverbal behavior means to different individuals. The degree of eye contact and the use of touch are 2 nonverbal behaviors that can differ depending on cultures. There are a number of therapeutic communication techniques nurses can use to enhance their nursing practices. There are also a number of non-therapeutic communication techniques that nurses can learn to avoid to enhance their effectiveness with people. Most nurses are most effective when they use non-threatening and open-ended communication techniques. Effective communication is a skill that develops over time and is integral to the establishment and maintenance of a therapeutic relationship. Effective therapeutic communication in nursing points to improved recovery rates, facilitates a sense of protection and safety, improves patient satisfaction, and results in greater treatment adherence. The clinical interview is a key component of psychiatric mental health nursing, and the nurse must establish a safe setting and plan for appropriate seating, introductions, and initiation of the interview. Attending behaviors, e.g., eye contact, body language, and vocal qualities, are key elements in effective communication. A meaningful therapeutic relationship is facilitated when values and cultural influences are considered. It is the nurse's responsibility to seek to understand the patient's perceptions. The application of telehealth information communication technologies in the psychosocial sciences is relatively new but viewed as a valuable tool for helping people with mental health and issues in behavioral health and medicine. Critical thinking. 1. Keep a written log of a conversation you have with a patient. In your log, identify the therapeutic and non-therapeutic techniques you noticed yourself using. Rewrite the non-therapeutic communications and replace them with statements that would better facilitate discussion of thoughts and feelings. Share your log and discuss the changes you are working on with one classmate. 2. Role play with a classmate at least 5 nonverbal communications and have your partner identify the message he or she received. 3. With the other students in your class watching, plan and role play a nurse-patient conversation that lasts about 3 minutes. Use both therapeutic and non-therapeutic techniques. When you are finished, have your other classmates try to identify the techniques that you used. 4. Demonstrate how the nurse would use touch and eye contact when working with patients from 3 different cultural groups. Chapter review. Questions. 1. Which statement made by the nurse demonstrates the best understanding of nonverbal communication? A. The patient's verbal and nonverbal communication is often different. B. When my patient responds to my question, I check for congruence between verbal and nonverbal communication to help validate the response. C. If a patient is slumped in the chair, I can be sure he's angry or depressed. D. It's easier to understand verbal communication than nonverbal communication. 2. Which nursing statement is an example of reflection? A. I think this feeling will pass. B. So you are saying that life has no meaning. C. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. D. You look sad. 3. When should a nurse be most alert to the possibility of communication errors resulting in harm to the patient? A. Change of shift report. B. Admission interviews. C. One-to-one conversations with patients. D. Conversations with patient families. 4. During an admission assessment and interview, which channels of information communication should the nurse be monitoring? Select all that apply. A. Auditory. B. Visual. C. Written. D. Tactile. E. Olfactory. 5. What principle about nurse-patient communication should guide a nurse's fear about saying the wrong thing to a patient? A. Patients tend to appreciate a well-meaning person who conveys genuine acceptance, respect, and concern for their situation. B. The patient is more interested in talking to you than listening to what you have to say and so is not likely to be offended. C. Considering the patient's history, there is little chance that the comment will do any actual harm. D. Most people with a mental illness have by necessity developed a high tolerance of forgiveness. 6. You have been working closely with a patient for the past month. Today he tells you he is looking forward to meeting with his new psychiatrist but frowns and avoids eye contact while reporting this to you. Which of the following responses would most likely be therapeutic? A. A new psychiatrist is a chance to start fresh. I'm sure it will go well for you. B. You say you look forward to the meeting, but you appear anxious or unhappy. C. I noticed that you frowned and avoided eye contact just now. Don't you feel well? D. I get the impression you don't really want to see your psychiatrist. Can you tell me why? 7. Which student behavior is consistent with therapeutic communication? A. Offering your opinion when asked to convey support. B. Summarizing the essence of the patient's comments in your own words. C. Interrupting periods of silence before they become awkward for the patient. D. Telling the patient he did well when you approve of his statements or actions. 8. James is a 42-year-old patient with schizophrenia. He approaches you as you arrive for day shift and anxiously reports, "Last night, demons came to my room and tried to rape me." Which response would be most therapeutic? A. There are no such things as demons. What you saw were hallucinations. B. It is not possible for anyone to enter your room at night. You are safe here. C. You seem very upset. Please tell me more about what you experienced last night. D. That must have been very frightening, but we'll check on you at night and you'll be safe. 9. Therapeutic communication is the foundation of a patient-centered interview. Which of the following techniques is not considered therapeutic? A. Restating. B. Encouraging description of perception. C. Summarizing. D. Asking why questions. 10. Carolina is surprised when her patient does not show for a regularly scheduled appointment. When contacted, the patient states, "I don't need to come see you anymore. I have found a therapy app on my phone that I love." How should Carolina respond to this news? A. That sounds exciting. Would you be willing to visit and show me the app? B. At this time, there is no real evidence that the app can replace our therapy. C. I am not sure that is a good idea right now. We are so close to progress. D. Why would you think that is a better option than meeting with me? Answers: 1. B. 2. D. 3. 4. A. B. D. E. 5. 6. B. 7. B. 8. C. 9. D. 10. A. Visit the Evolve website for a post-test on the content in this chapter. http://evolve.elsevier.com/varcarolus. References: American Nurses Association, ANA, American Psychiatric Nurses Association, and International Society of Psychiatric Mental Health Nurses.
Okay, guys, so if you can hear me, I just completed, chapter 9, which is Therapeutic Communication. So, oh God, thank you, Jesus. So now I'm going to be reviewing the questions here. All right. So for question 1, I put B. It says, which statement made by the nurse demonstrates the best understanding of nonverbal communication? I put B. When my patient responds to my question, I check for congruence between verbal and nonverbal communication to help validate the response. And that was correct. Number 2, which nurse statement is an example of reflection? The answer is D. You look sad. 3, when should a nurse be most alert to the possibility of communication errors resulting in harm to the patient? The answer is A. Change or shift report. 4, during an admission assessment and interview, which channels of information communication should a nurse be monitoring? Select all that apply. The answer is A, B, D, and E. I put A, B. Okay, so it's not written. You should not be assessing. During an admission assessment, you're listening, you're seeing, you're tactile, which means you're looking at the touch, and you're listening with your ears, but you're not really assessing the writing. Number 5, what principle about nurse-patient communication should guide a nurse's fear about saying the wrong thing to a patient? Number 5 is A. Patients tend to appreciate a well-meaning person who conveys genuine acceptance, respect, and concern for their situation. Number 6, you have been working closely with a patient for the past month. Today, he tells you he is looking forward to meeting with his new psychiatrist, but frowns and avoids eye contact while reporting this to you. Which of the following responses would most likely be therapeutic? The answer is B. You say you look forward to the meeting, but you appear anxious or unhappy. 7, which student behavior is consistent with therapeutic communication? The answer is B. Summarizing the essence of the patient's comment in your own words. 8, James is a 40-year-old patient with schizophrenia. He approaches you as you arrive for day shift and anxiously report, "Last night, demons came to my room and tried to rape me." Which response would be most therapeutic? The answer is C. You seem very upset. Please tell me more about what you experienced last night. Now, y'all, if somebody tells me that, I'm going to start saying, the blood of Jesus. We bind up every demon. We bind up every devil. We bind up every enemy that'll try to enter into the room spiritually or naturally to do hurt, harm, or danger. I apply the blood of Jesus over it, and I pray that that will not happen to the patients, and I pray that it will not happen to the students as well, in Jesus' name. Number 9 says therapeutic communication is the foundation of a patient-centered interview. Which of the following techniques is not considered therapeutic? Why questions. Asking a person why is not therapeutic, guys. That's one thing I'm learning as well, is that it's not so much about having a social relationship, but it's also about having a therapeutic relationship. So that's one thing, guys, that I have on my prayer list, is being able to build therapeutic communications. I know for like the past few years, I've been focusing on being intimate, having an intimate relationship. But what about being therapeutic? What about having a therapeutic relationship? And so that's one thing I'm working on, and I want to know is how to have a therapeutic relationship. All right, 10 says, Caroline is surprised when her patient does not show up for a regularly scheduled appointment. When contact, the patient says, "I don't need to come to see you anymore. I have found a therapy app on my phone. I'm in love with it." How should Caroline respond to this? That sounds exciting. Would you be willing to visit and show me the app? You got a new app that you really love? Come on, come show me. So that was question A. This chapter, guys, was chapter 9, Therapeutic Communication. Knowledge of communication and interviewing the techniques is the foundation for developing any nurse-patient relationship. Goal-directed professional communication is referred to as therapeutic communication. Communication is complex, but if you practice it, you'll get perfected. Communication has 5 parts: stimulus, sender, message, medium, and receiver. Make sure that you meet all 5 parts of communication. Don't miss anything. Okay, guys? Now, it's also important, verbal communication, nonverbal communication. Communication has 2 levels: verbal speech, which is the content level, and the process level, which is nonverbal behavior. Also, most nurses are most effective when they use non-threatening, open-ended communication. Nurses, we cannot be threatening, okay? All things work together for our good. We always don't get it right, okay? Sometimes we got to continue to practice. We got to continue to practice. We got to think thoughts that are right, and know that, you know what, it's going to work together for the good. But we must continue to communicate. Communication is so important, guys. All right. Eye contact, body language, vocal qualities. Make sure every key element of communication you're practicing. Sometimes, guys, it is so hard for me to have communication with my eyes. My eyes are so gentle, guys, but I have to continue to practice, even if it's for like 5 seconds, 5 seconds. eye contact, eye contact, eye contact, communication, body language, not slouching. Me, I'm the kind of person I always like to put my feet in the chair. It relaxes me a little bit, but I have to remember feet on the floor. But in this personal study zone, in this personal environment, this is my study zone. This is my study mansion, guys. In this zone right here, relax. If you want to put your foot in the chair, put your foot in the chair. Come on, somebody. If you want to take a break and drink some water, drink some water. Come on, okay? All right. So, the next chapter that I'm going to be reading, let me get my syllabus, guys. Let's see here. I might be able to pull up on my computer, but I think it's chapter 34. Chapter 34 is, and I'm so excited, guys. It's so good when you're looking at a book and you start to, books are so great, guys. All right, chapter 34. So chapter 34 is Therapeutic Group. All right, so let's check out therapeutic groups. I'm so sorry. I'm talking a lot with my I'm so sorry. I decrease. All right, so let's see here. Try not to talk so much with my hands, guys. All right. So I'm so sorry about that. All right, so I'm just pulling up my syllabus here to see what is the next chapter. I already completed 1 through 6. I got to do some printing out, also reviewing the questions chapters that I did already print out, but just reviewing my psych mental health reading list. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got a week 1 assignment that's due on the 21st, quiz due on the 28th, mastery quiz on the 27th. The class opens up tomorrow. Let's see here now. Did I go to, okay, 7, 8, 9, pardon me, guys. 7, 8, 9 in chapter 34. Then from 34, I'm going to go to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, so I'm about to read chapter 34. Let's just see here where everything is. I gotta put this one back up over here. Oh no, where? Let me see. Here it is. Sorry, got it. All right. So I'm going to be reading. Okay, I'm going to be reading chapter 34. So I'm going to get there now. And that's probably going to be Unit 7, Therapeutic Groups. All right, so I'm going to get started. I love to read and hear different kind of voices as I read. So let's see. Probably going to read with, I did Chrome OS US English 6. So I'm probably going to go with Chrome
Objectives.
US English 7.
1. Identify basic concepts related to group work. 2. Describe the phases of group development. 3. Define task and maintenance roles of group members. 4. Discuss Yalom's therapeutic factors. 5. Discuss 7 types of groups commonly led by basic level registered nurses. 6. Describe a group intervention for A member who is silent or B member who is demoralizing. Key terms and concepts. Feedback. Group content. Group norms. Group phases. Group process. Group psychotherapy. Group work. Individual roles. Maintenance roles. Task roles. Therapeutic factors. Therapeutic group. Visit the Evolve website for a pretest on the content in this chapter. http://evolve.elsevier.com/barcarolus. It takes people to make people sick, and it takes people to make people well again. Harry Stack Sullivan, 1953. Humans are fundamentally social and are wired for attachment. Siegel, 2012. We form groups because we are psychologically and physiologically dependent on one another. A group is an interconnected and interdependent set of individuals who come together for a shared purpose. These purposes can vary as widely as marriage, a social group inventing cures for cancer, or building a nuclear reactor task groups. Groups can be as large and complex as nations or as intimate as those with whom we share the love, joy, anxiety, fear, sorrow, and doubt that comes with being alive. From group to therapeutic group. The First and Second World Wars are examples of the fantastic destruction that can arise through human collaboration. These two wars resulted in vast numbers of traumatized veterans and civilians. Psychotherapists, in an effort to help the large numbers of psychologically wounded veterans, began to treat individuals in groups. A therapeutic group refers to any group of people who meet together for personal development and psychotherapeutic growth. Box 34.1. Group therapy advantages and disadvantages. Advantages. Multiple members can be in treatment at the same time. Members of a therapeutic group benefit from the knowledge, insights, and life experiences of both the leader and the participants. A therapeutic group can be a safe setting to learn new ways of relating to other people and to practice new communication skills. Groups can promote feelings of cohesiveness. Disadvantages. Individual members may feel cheated for participation time, particularly in large groups. There may be concerns about privacy. A member of the group may become disruptive during an emotionally vulnerable point. Group identity may discourage dissent. Cohesiveness may bind group members together and encourage unacceptable, illegal behaviors. Not all patients benefit from group treatment. People who are acutely psychotic, acutely manic, or intoxicated are not appropriate candidates for group therapy. Group settings provide an efficient method of addressing the needs of multiple individuals. There are drawbacks to this method, and group work may not suit every situation. See Box 34.1 for a list of the advantages and disadvantages of group therapy. Skilled group leaders can usually address and manage problematic group issues. In fact, groups usually provide nurses with excellent opportunities to facilitate growth in patients. This chapter explores concepts central to therapeutic groups, group leadership styles, and various types of group treatment settings. Concepts common to all groups. Therapeutic factors. Irvin D. Yalom, an existential psychiatrist, developed an influential approach to group psychotherapy. Yalom and Lesh, 2005. He identified the core principles that make a group therapeutic. These therapeutic factors are aspects of the group experience that leaders and members have identified as curative, healing, and crucial for therapeutic change. For example, within a therapeutic group, a member may recognize for the first time that she is not so different from those around her. Yalom calls this factor universality, a patient's recognition that other people feel the same way or have had the same experiences. When universality is discovered within a group, it helps create a feeling of belonging and connection. Group leaders can emphasize certain therapeutic factors that correlate with the desired outcome of the group. DeLucia Walk et al., 2014. The leader may also role model some therapeutic behaviors during the initial phase of group development, such as instilling hope and imparting information. Table 34.1 summarizes the curative factors that patients benefit from during group therapy. Group content and process. One of the most fascinating aspects of group work is recognizing what is happening on the surface and what is going on underneath. Group content is the easiest to describe. If you were to take record of group's interactions, type up what everyone says, and print it out, you would have a transcript of the content of the group. Minutes from meetings are examples of content. Group process is the term used to describe everything else that goes on in the group. It refers to the way that group members interact with one another. They may be supportive, interruptive, judgmental, or silent. Their expressions may be concerned, hostile, open, closed, bored, or intense. Speech may be rapid, loud, mumbled, or soft. The group process is the art of doing group work. For groups to be effective and helpful, it is the group process that must be carefully managed and supported. Groups tend to develop their own identity. Leaders are aware of these identities and may describe them positively with terms such as cohesive and supportive, or negatively with terms such as codependent or disengaged. This shared identity takes the form of group norms. Group norms are established expectations or assumptions held by members of a group regarding what kind of behavior is acceptable, good or bad, allowed or not allowed. While group members rarely spontaneously articulate these expectations, they could do so if asked. Other terms that are central to therapeutic groups are found in Box 34.2. Everybody is identical in their secret and spoken belief that way deep down they are different from everyone else. D.F. Wallace, 1996. Phases of group development. Group phases represent distinct periods or stages in the process of group development. All groups go through developmental phases similar to those identified for individual therapeutic relationships referred to. Chapter 8. In each phase of the therapeutic group, the group leader has specific roles and challenges to address in support of positive interaction, growth, and change. Planning phase. To develop a successful group, planning should include a description of specific characteristics. The following attributes should be identified. The name of the group. Objectives of the group. Types of individuals, e.g., diagnoses, age, gender for inclusion. Group schedule, frequency, times of meetings. Physical setting. Table 34.1. Curative factors in group therapy. Curative factor. Description. Example. Interpersonal learning. Members gain insight into themselves based on the feedback from others during later group phases. When you speak to me that way, I feel intimidated. Catharsis. Through experiencing and expressing feelings, therapeutic discharge of emotions is shared. This experience allowed me to get in touch with my sadness. Installation of hope. The leader shares optimism about successes of group treatment, and members share their improvements. You got better, maybe I can too. Universality. Members realize that they are not alone with their problems, feelings, or thoughts. You feel that way too. Wow, I am not alone. Imparting of information. Participants receive formal teaching by the leader or advice from peers. Here is how to take your medication. Altruism. Members gain or profit from giving support to others, leading to improved self-value. I'm sorry that happened to you. I can help you. Corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. Members repeat patterns of behavior in the group that they learned in their families. With feedback from the leader and peers, they learn about their own behavior. Is this the way you speak to your wife at home? Socializing techniques. Members learn new social skills based on others' feedback and modeling. You took that criticism really well. You didn't appear to become upset. Maybe I can try that. Imitative behavior. Members may copy behavior from the leader or peers and can adopt healthier habits. I like the way you answered that question. Maybe I can try that next time. Group cohesiveness. This powerful factor arises in a mature group when each member feels connected to the other members, the leader, and the group as a whole. Members can accept positive feedback and constructive criticism. This group has helped me to see that when I complain to my daughter about her father that I am triangulating her by trying to get her on my side. Now I see how unfair this is to her. Existential resolution. Members examine aspects of life, e.g., loneliness, mortality, responsibility that affect everyone in constructing meaning. I understand that all of us struggle with the inevitable loss. Data from Yalom, ID, and Lesh, M. 2005. The Theory and Practice of Group Psychotherapy, 5th ed. New York, NY, Basic Books. Box 34.2. Terms central to therapeutic groups. Terms describing group work. Group content, all that is said in the group, e.g., the group's topics. Group process, the dynamics of interaction among the members, e.g., who talks to whom, facial expressions, body language, and progression of group work. Group norms, expectations for behavior in the group that develop over time and provide structure, e.g., rules about starting on time, not interrupting. Group themes, members' expressed ideas or feelings that recur and share a common thread. The leader may clarify a theme to help members recognize it more fully. Feedback, providing group members with awareness about how they affect one another. Conflict, open disagreement among members. Positive conflict resolution within a group is key to successful outcomes. Seating configuration. Description of leader and member responsibilities. Methods or means of evaluating outcomes. Other decisions have to do with the type of group being planned. Some groups meet for a specific amount of time to accomplish a certain task while others are open-ended. Additional characteristics of groups are found in Box 34.3. Planning and structure are especially important when group leaders are likely to change, such as in patient settings where staffing patterns change. When several groups are running simultaneously with a common goal, such as in a research study, consistency is crucial. Box 34.3. Terms describing membership. Heterogeneous group, a group in which a range of differences exists among members. Homogeneous group, a group in which all members share central traits, e.g., men's group, group of patients with bipolar disorder. Closed group, a group in which membership is restricted, no new members are added when others leave. Open group, a group in which new members are added as others leave, e.g., inpatient group with transient membership. Subgroup, an individual or a small group that is isolated within a larger group and functions separately. Members of a subgroup may have greater loyalty, more similar goals, or more perceived similarities to one another than they do to the larger group. Thoughtful consideration of the physical space is important. The size of the room should be functional. A large room for a small group does not encourage intimacy, and an overcrowded room may cause discomfort and anxiety among members. Room temperature, lighting, external noise, and privacy are important comfort measures to consider. Depending on the size of the group, organize the room and its physical boundaries with close non-hierarchical seating. Arranging chairs in a circle conveys equality and allows members to see one another. Inpatient groups tend to be somewhat different from outpatient groups. In general, inpatient groups require more structure due to the acuity level of patients being hospitalized. Table 34.2 compares outpatient to inpatient groups. Table 34.2. Comparison of outpatient and inpatient groups. Group component. Outpatient groups. Inpatient groups. Composition. The group has a stable composition. The group is rarely the same for more than 1 or 2 meetings. Membership selection. Members are carefully selected and prepared. Patients are admitted to the group with little prior selection or preparation. Level of functioning. The group is homogeneous with regard to ego function. The group has a heterogeneous level of ego function. Motivation. Motivated, self-referred patients make up the group. Therapy is growth-oriented. Patients are ambivalent, as therapy is often compulsory. Therapy is relief-oriented. Length of group treatment. Treatment proceeds as long as required, may continue for years. Treatment is limited to the hospital period, with rapid patient turnover. Boundary. The boundary of the group is well maintained, with few external influences. Boundary diffuse, events in the milieu affect the group. Cohesion. Group cohesion develops normally, given sufficient time in treatment. There may be little time for cohesion to develop spontaneously. Group development and work progress may be limited to the initial phases. Leadership. The leader allows the process to unfold. There is ample time to let group norms evolve. The group leader structures time and is not passive. Contact. Members only convene for scheduled group meetings, encouraged to avoid extra group contact. Patients eat, sleep, and live together outside of the group. Extra group contact is endorsed. Data from McKenzie, K.R. 1997. Time-managed group psychotherapy, effective clinical applications. Washington, D.C., American Psychiatric Press. Orientation phase. In the orientation phase, the group is forming. The group leader's role is active in structuring an atmosphere of respect, confidentiality, and trust. During the first session, the group leader should provide a personal introduction. Members are encouraged to get to know one another through their own introductions. The leader describes the purpose of the group. Initially, members may be overly polite, quiet, or anxious because they have not yet established trust with one another. Therapeutic interaction is supported when the directive group leader points out similarities between members, encourages them to talk directly to each other rather than to the leader, and reminds members about ground rules for respectful, meaningful interaction. Participants are urged to treat what happens in the group as confidential. Technology presents several challenges to confidentiality. Mobile phones can be used to record voices and images or to make posts on social media. For this reason and also to reduce disruptive incoming notifications, group members should turn off their phones during group therapy. Working phase. During the working phase, the leader facilitates communication, the flow of group processes, and group conduct. The group leader's role is to encourage focus on problem solving consistent with the purpose of the group. As group members begin to feel safe within the group, conflicts may be expressed, which should be viewed by the group leader as a positive opportunity for group growth. It is important for the leader to guide and support conflict resolution. Through successful resolution of conflicts, group members develop confidence in their problem-solving abilities and better support one another in their individual efforts to grow and change. Tupman, 1965, described steps in this working phase, which takes place after the forming phase. He called them the classic stages of storming, norming, and performing, and identified them as natural and necessary in the development of a group. Storming refers to the disagreements, attempts at dominance, and personality clashes that must be addressed in order for the work of the group to be done. The authority and legitimacy of the leader may be questioned in this phase. Norming occurs when personality clashes and disagreements are resolved and a spirit of cooperation emerges. Team members begin to settle into their respective roles. Performing groups have established norms and roles. Group members focus on achieving goals. The sequence of these phases begins with the generation of group cohesion, followed by completion of group tasks, resulting in insight development. Groups may revert to earlier stages when conflict arises. Leadership activities at different phases of group formation will require different approaches and strategies and ultimately yield team building. Termination phase. In the termination phase, the leader ensures that each member summarizes personal accomplishments, shares new insights, and identifies future goals. The leader encourages group members to provide both positive and negative feedback regarding the group experience. Feedback refers to information that group members get from other members about how they affect one another. Members may experience feelings of loss or anger about the group ending. At times, the individual can direct these feelings toward other group members or the leader. It is important to openly address such feelings as part of the work toward successful group adjournment. Post-group issues, evaluation and follow-up. Evaluation and follow-up are fundamental aspects of a therapeutic group. Objective measures are an important way to demonstrate group effectiveness. Questionnaires can be helpful in refining what patients found helpful. The Therapeutic Factors Inventory 19. Joyce et al. 2011 is a questionnaire that asks patients to identify which of the therapeutic factors were present in therapy. The group questionnaire. Burlingame, 2010 is another tool that evaluates the climate, cohesion, empathy, and alliance of the group. Regardless of the scale or instrument used, group leaders should evaluate all groups to determine if goals set in the planning phase were accomplished and to reevaluate or redesign future groups. Table 34.3. Functional roles of group members. Role. Function. Example. Task roles. Coordinator. Tries to connect various ideas and suggestions. Elaborator. Gives examples and follows up meaning of ideas. Energizer. Encourages the group to make decisions or take action. Evaluator. Measures the group's work against objectives. Information giver. Provides facts or shares experience as an authority figure. Information seeker. Tries to clarify the group's values. Initiator contributor. Offers new ideas or a fresh outlook on an issue. Opinion giver. Shares opinions, especially to influence group values. Orientier. Notes the progress of the group toward goals. Procedural technician. Supports group activity with physical tasks, e.g., distributing papers, arranging seating. Recorder. Keeps notes and acts as the group memory. Maintenance roles. Compromiser. During conflict, yields to preserve group harmony. Encourager. Praises and seeks input from others. Follower. Agrees with the flow of the group. Gatekeeper. Monitors the participation of all members to keep communication open and equal. Group observer. Notes different aspects of group process and reports to the group. Harmonizer. Tries to mediate conflicts between members. Standard setter. Verbalizes standards for the group. Individual roles. Aggressor. Criticizes and attacks others' ideas and feelings. Blocker. Disagrees with and halts group issues, oppositional. Dominator. Tries to control other members of the group with flattery or interruptions. Help seeker. Asks for sympathy of group excessively. Playboy. Acts disinterested in group process. Recognition seeker. Seeks attention by boasting and discussing achievements. Self-confessor. Verbalizes feelings or observations beyond the scope of the group topic. Special interest pleader. Advocates for a special group, usually with own prejudice or bias. From Ben, K. and Sheets, P. 1948. Functional roles of group members. Journal of Social Issues, 4241-49. Group participant roles. We each have a particular style of interacting with others. Some of us tend to sit back and observe, giving an opinion only after careful consideration. Others feel it is important to keep everyone moving in a common direction, or helping maintain order, or actively urging people to continue working. The way we behave in groups is a function of our personalities, e.g., shy or outgoing, socialization, e.g., birth order, prior exposure to groups, and comfort or interest with the context of the group, e.g., topic, members, leader. Studies of group dynamics have identified functional roles that group members often assume, which may either help or hinder the group's development. The classic descriptive categories for these roles are task, maintenance, and individual roles. Ben and Sheets, 1948. Task roles keep the group focused on its main purpose and get the work done. Maintenance roles keep the group together, help each person feel worthwhile and included, and create a sense of group cohesion. Individual roles have nothing to do with helping the group but instead relate to specific personalities, personal agendas, and desires for having personal needs met. For example, a blocker throws up roadblocks to disrupt group progress or to avoid doing his own real work. Awareness of roles that individual members assume can assist the group leader in identifying behaviors that should be reinforced or confronted. Members' growing self-awareness of their roles may encourage more deliberate and insightful group participation and growth. Table 34.3 describes the functional roles of group members. Therapeutic framework for groups. Psychiatric mental health nurses are involved in a variety of therapeutic groups in acute care, long-term, and community treatment settings. For all group leaders, a clear theoretical framework is necessary for analyzing the group dynamics and progress. Table 34.4 describes common theoretical frameworks underlying group work. Nurse as a group leader. Registered nurses who are trained at the basic level diploma, associate degree, or baccalaureate degree have holistic training and educational leadership skills to provide group therapy in a variety of settings. Registered nurses with basic preparation may lead activity, educational, task, and support groups. Advanced practice registered nurses, APRNs, may lead these groups as well. They are also qualified to facilitate other specialized group treatments, including psychotherapy, for which more complex skills are necessary. Types of therapeutic groups are discussed in Table 34.5. Support and self-help groups are outlined in Box 34.4. Table 34.4. Theoretical foundations for group therapy. Theoretical base. Focus. Leader practices. Humanism, patient-centered, existential, experiential. Self-actualization, awareness of subjective experience. Non-directive, active listening, Socratic dialogue. Cognitive behavioral. Specific maladaptive behaviors and thought patterns. Goal setting, planning, reinforcing, modeling, and monitoring. Psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, Gestalt. Insight, resolution of intrapsychic conflict. Listening, interpreting, confronting, probing, working through, directing enactments. Psychoeducational. Information on specific topics, coping, emotional and practical support. Teaching, modeling, organizing, leading discussions, assessing. Systems, Adlerian, choice, reality, feminist, family, interpersonal. Positive interaction with social and political milieu, balance between individual and society, social equality. Modeling, analyzing, strategizing, lifestyle investigation, activism. From Day, SX 2014. A Unifying Theory for Group Counseling and Psychotherapy. In J. L. DeLucia Walk, C. R. Kalodner, and M. Riva eds. Handbook of Group Counseling and Psychotherapy, 2nd ed. pp. 24-33. Los Angeles, California, Sage. An important aspect of the group leader's responsibility is modeling sensitivity in respect to both individual and larger cultural differences. The leader initially sets a foundation for open communication by defining the importance of shared respect for group conduct. As group members begin to engage with one another, the leader should be aware of cultural differences that may impact efforts to maintain open, respectful communication. Diversity exists in many forms, including racial, ethnic, economic, and sexual orientation. Encouraging members to share and explore their cultural assumptions and beliefs promotes genuine, rich communication and provides the group with the opportunity to explore similarities and differences in a safe environment. Styles of leadership. There are three main styles of group leadership. While we all have preferred methods of interacting that may range from directive to hands-off, in group situations leaders should defer to the group's goals. Ideally, a leader selects the style that is best suited to the therapeutic needs of a particular group. Autocratic leaders exert control over the group and do not encourage much interaction among members. For example, staff leading a community meeting with a fixed time-limited agenda may tend to be more autocratic. Democratic leaders support extensive group interaction in the process of problem solving. Psychotherapy groups most often employ this empowering leadership style. Laissez-faire leaders allow the group members to behave in any way they choose and do not attempt to control the direction of the group. In a creative group such as an art or horticulture group, the leader may choose a flexible laissez-faire style, directing minimally to allow for a variety of responses. In any group, the leader must be thoughtful about using communication techniques because these can have a tremendous impact on group content and process. Table 34.6 describes communication techniques frequently used by group leaders. Group leader supervision. Clinical supervision is important for registered nurse group leaders. It provides feedback about performance and enhances professional growth. Transference and countertransference issues occur in groups just as they do in therapeutic relationships during one-to-one work referred to. Chapter 8. These issues can be identified and managed effectively with the help of a trusted colleague. Clinical supervision also provides outside input and perspective while supporting a focus on therapeutic goals. Co-leadership of groups is a common practice and has several benefits, which include 1. Providing training for less experienced staff, 2. Allowing for immediate debriefing between leaders after sessions, and 3. Offering 2 distinctive role models for teaching communication skills to members. According to the American Nurse Association Scope and Standards of Practice. ANA, 2014 APRNs are able to provide clinical supervision to other clinicians. The purpose of the supervision of other providers is to evaluate their performance and meet the need for peer supervision. With appropriate educational preparation, the APRN may supervise group therapy leaders to help them examine and understand their performances and effectiveness. The APRN clinical supervisor must extend confidentiality to the group leaders under their guidance. APRNs who lead group or individual therapy need to seek their own clinical supervision from a more experienced clinical psychiatric provider. Considering culture. Members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer LGBTQ community are diverse. Group leaders may not know when LGBT patients are in a therapeutic group. Group leaders should be mindful of obtaining supervision and training to ensure that group therapy does not create barriers that would silence or marginalize members of this population. Goodrich and Luke, 2011. Table 34.5. Types of therapeutic groups. Psychiatric mental health registered nurse. Type. Purpose. Psychoeducational group. Groups set up to increase knowledge or skills about a specific psychological or somatic subject and allow members to communicate emotional concerns. These groups may be time-limited or may be supportive for long-term treatment. Generally, written handouts or audiovisual aids are used to focus on specific teaching points. Medication education. The psychoeducational group for which the nurse most commonly assumes responsibility is the medication education group. These groups teach patients about their medications, answer their questions, and prepare them for self-management. The group setting facilitates discussion. When patients have concerns about taking medications, it is often the group members themselves who are in the position to most effectively respond to these questions. Yes, I got a dry mouth when I first started taking that, but it got better. Hang in there. Health education. Nurses also frequently lead health education groups, including groups on medical conditions and general health topics, such as sex education. The majority of patients with a serious mental illness will have comorbid chronic medical illnesses. Common topics for discussion may include the following: diabetes, hypertension, HIV, AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections, condom use and other forms of safer sex practices for harm reduction, nutrition, and exercise. Dual diagnosis. Dual diagnosis groups incorporate learning about coexisting mental illnesses and substance use disorders. Since treatment issues for patients with dual diagnoses can be complex, group leaders must have competency in both mental health and substance use treatment. The goals are to engage patients in treatment, decrease their use of substances in a step-by-step, meaningful process and improve psychiatric symptoms. Symptom management. For patients with common symptoms resulting from a disorder such as anger or anxiety, symptom management groups are ideal. The group focuses on sharing positive and negative experiences so that members learn coping skills from one another. The primary goal is to increase self-control by helping patients develop a plan for action at the first appearance of chronic symptoms to prevent relapse. Stress management. Stress management groups teach members about various relaxation techniques, including deep breathing, exercise, music, and spirituality. Mindfulness groups focus on developing awareness of the present moment with the intent to induce relaxation and promote insight into thoughts, emotions, and physical symptom responses. Therapeutic community meetings. With the promotion of patient rights and advocacy, another common group consistently held on inpatient units is the therapeutic community meeting. As every interaction in an inpatient milieu has the potential to be therapeutic, the community meeting is the essential venue at which unit happenings are processed and integrated into treatment. Group members adjust to authority, rules, and tolerance of peers. Patient governance and advocacy matters are ideally managed during these groups, and nurses are ideally suited to lead these groups because they model socially appropriate behavior and are in close daily contact with patients and make frequent individual and unit assessments. Support and self-help. Support self-help groups are structured for the purpose of providing patients with the opportunity to maintain or enhance personal and social functioning through cooperation and shared understanding of life's challenges. One of the most important functions of such groups is to demonstrate universality to individuals, as they are not alone in having a particular problem. Group members help one another by telling their stories and providing alternative ways to view and resolve problems. Advanced Practice Psychiatric Mental Health Registered Nurse. Group psychotherapy or group therapy. Group psychotherapy is a specialized treatment intervention led by an advanced practice mental health professional such as an advanced practice psychiatric mental health registered nurse, psychologist, or social worker. Groups may focus on specific problems such as depression, obesity, chronic pain, or substance use. They may also focus on more general topics such as improving social skills, shyness, anger, or grieving. Dialectical behavior treatment. Dialectical behavior treatment (DBT) groups were originally developed for the treatment of patients with borderline personality disorder and suicidal behaviors. It has proven to be successful with other illnesses such as eating disorders. DBT groups focus on improving interpersonal, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional skills. At the same time, members learn to reduce self-destructive behaviors by focusing on acceptance and mindfulness. This treatment requires specialized training and advanced education. Ethical issues in group therapy. The Code of Ethics for Nurses with Interpretive Statements. ANA, 2015 provides the definition for professional ethical conduct for registered nurses. The nurse group leader has an ethical obligation to inform participants of risks and benefits of group participation, informed consent. They must also discuss both confidentiality and exceptions to confidentiality. Because a group contains individuals who are not bound by a professional code of ethics, there is no way to guarantee confidentiality. Other topics the group leader must address are, who is free to leave the group, and what are the rules about group members socializing outside group. A member is only removed from the group as a last resort. One obvious reason is if one member were to become violent or aggressive toward another member. This would necessitate temporary or permanent removal. Other reasons that might require temporary or permanent removal from the group include 1. A member who is consistently unwilling or unable to participate, or 2. A member who violates the agreements created for group membership. Box 34.4. Support and self-help groups. Support groups. Bereavement groups for those who have experienced the loss of a loved one. Suicide survivor groups for those who have lost a loved one to suicide. NAMI, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, groups for patient family support, education, and advocacy. Cancer support groups for families and patients coping with the ramifications of this terminal illness. Virtual support groups for a growing number of people, providing online, synchronous interaction and support, which may be perceived as more private or anonymous. Veteran support groups. Self-help groups. 12-step groups that use a common model for recovery. Alcoholics Anonymous (AH), the prototype for other 12-step groups. Gamblers Anonymous (GA). Overeaters Anonymous (OA). Narcotics Anonymous (NA). Codependents Anonymous. Adult Children of Alcoholics (ACOA) and Al-Anon Friends and Families of Alcoholics. Recovery International for people who have had a mental illness. Groups use prescribed model for managing illness and recovery. National Mental Health Consumers Self-Help Clearinghouse, an information clearinghouse to guide consumers to the nearly 500 diverse types of self-help groups in operation. Table 34.6. Group leader communication techniques. Technique. Example. Active listening. Eye contact, head nod, go on. Ask questions. Could you tell us the last time you did that? Giving information. Antidepressants may take as long as 4 weeks or more to show full therapeutic effects. Clarification. What do you mean when you say, I can't go back to work? Confrontation. Jane, you're saying nothing is wrong, but you are crying. Empathizing. I can see how that experience was very painful. Reflection. I noticed you're clenching your fists. What are you feeling right now? It sounds like that really upset you. Summarization. We've talked about different types of cognitive distortions, and everyone identified at least one irrational thought that has influenced their behavior in a negative way. In the next session, we'll explore some strategies for correcting negative thinking. Support. It took a lot of courage to explore those painful feelings. You're really working hard on resolving this problem. Group leaders should obtain appropriate training or credentialing to practice, and must work within the honest defined scope of practice. The best way to help patients and at the same time avoid malpractice lawsuits for negligence is for the group leader to consistently follow the ethical guidelines and professional standards of practice. To protect the integrity of the group therapy process, nurse clinicians should use evidence-based practice. For instance, brief cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) has proven beneficial for depression and anxiety. Bernhardsdottir et al., 2013. Staying current with research helps nurse clinicians to select the best therapeutic modality for the target group audience. Evidence-based practice helps ensure that the therapeutic group maximizes benefit and minimizes harm. See Table 34.7 for some examples of evidence-based groups. Table 34.8 reviews the quality of evidence from the 1990s to the present on group treatment outcomes for different disorders and patient populations. Dealing with challenging member behaviors. Research into group dynamics has identified certain behaviors of individual members that are challenging to manage within a group. Many defensive behaviors used by patients interfere with their ability to function or achieve satisfaction in their lives. Group therapy is about working through problem behaviors and resistance, but some behaviors can be especially disruptive to the group process and difficult for the leader to manage. In dealing with any problematic behaviors and issues in groups, members may appreciate help disclosing their own feelings and responses. The leader encourages the use of statements that do not focus on what the other one did but the how of expressions such as, "When you speak this way, I feel." The leader helps by noting that feelings are not right or wrong but simply exist. People tend to feel less defensive when "I feel" statements rather than "your" statements are used. This approach helps members feel like part of the group, not alienated from it or threatened. The patient who monopolizes the group, the patient who complains but continues to reject help, the demoralizing patient, and the silent patient are examples. Yalom and Lesh, 2005, and specific group interventions may be beneficial. Monopolizing group member. One subtle method in dealing with a monopolizing group member is to address the entire group. Provide them with a reminder that, during group work, everyone should have an equal chance to contribute and members should consider whether or not they are dominating the group's time. It may be necessary to speak directly to the monopolizing group member, either privately or in the group setting. In private, you can share your observations and suggest that perhaps nervousness may be a factor causing the talkativeness. You may then ask the patient to limit contributions to a specific number of times, such as 2 or 3. In the group setting, the leader may ask the group if they would like to share observations or feedback about other members, thereby offering a chance for redirecting growth. This strategy is probably the most challenging but potentially the most rewarding in that members feel empowered, and the real therapeutic forces of groups are realized. Table 34.7. Evidence-based group treatment methods. Theoretical base. Focus. Leader practices. Humanist, patient-centered, existential, experiential. Self-actualization, awareness of subjective experience. Non-directive, active listening, Socratic dialogue. Cognitive behavioral. Specific maladaptive behaviors and thought patterns. Goal setting, planning, reinforcing, modeling, and monitoring. Psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, Gestalt. Insight, resolution of intrapsychic conflict. Listening, interpreting, confronting, probing, working through, directing enactments. Psychoeducational. Information on specific topics, coping, emotional and practical support. Teaching, modeling, organizing, leading discussions, assessing. Systems Adlerian, choice reality, feminist, family, interpersonal. Positive interaction with social and political milieu, balance between individual and society, social equality. Modeling, analyzing, strategizing lifestyle investigation, activism. From Day, SX 2014. A Unifying Theory for Group Counseling and Psychotherapy. In J. L. DeLucia Walk, C. R. Kalodner, and M. Reba eds. Handbook of Group Counseling and Psychotherapy, 2nd ed. pp. 24-33. Los Angeles, California, Sage. Table 34.8. Quality of evidence from 1990s to present. Use of group treatment. Very good to excellent. Promising to good. Group is primary. Social phobia, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, bulimia nervosa, eating disorders. Mood disorders. Group as adjunct. Schizophrenia, personality disorders, trauma-related disorders, medical cancer, substance use disorders. Medical, HIV, sexual abuse, pain, somatoform. From Burlingame, GM, Whitcomb, K., and Woodland, S. 2014. Process and Outcome in Group Counseling and Psychotherapy, A Perspective. In J. L. DeLucia Walk, C. R. Kalodner, and M. Reba eds. Handbook of Group Counseling and Psychotherapy, 2nd ed., page 57. Los Angeles, California, Sage. Demoralizing group member. Some people whose behavior is self-centered, angry, or depressed may lack empathy, hope, or concern for other members of the group. They refuse to take any personal responsibility and can challenge the group leader and negatively affect the group process. The group leader should listen to the comments objectively. The leader may choose to speak to the group member in private and ask what is causing the anger. Sometimes this simple exchange can make the patient feel more connected with the nurse and, more importantly, is a member of the group. This intervention will likely decrease hostile behavior and increase the group's benefit. Angry patients may be extremely vulnerable, and devaluing or demoralizing keeps others at a distance and maintains the patient's own precarious sense of safety. Leaders must empathize with the patient in a matter-of-fact manner, such as, "You seem angry that the group wants to support you." Silent group member. Patients who are silent in the group may be observing intently until they decide the group is safe for them. Other silent groups members may believe they are not as competent as other, more assertive group members. Silence might or might not mean that the member is not engaged or involved, but it should be addressed for several reasons. The person who does not speak cannot benefit from others' feedback on their thoughts, and other group members are deprived of this group member's valuable insights. Furthermore, a silent group member may make others uncomfortable and create a sense of mistrust. There are several techniques that may help, including allowing the person to have extra time to formulate thoughts before responding. Saying, "I'll give you a moment to think about that," and waiting or coming back to the group member later is often helpful. Another tactic is to make an assignment that every person in the group respond to a certain topic or question. For example, let's all write down a positive and assertive response to something that you generally feel helpless about. I'll give you a minute or so to think this over, and then I'm going to ask each of you to share. Expected outcomes. Expected outcomes of group participation vary depending on the type and purpose of the group. For education groups, such as a medication education group, the expected outcome would be the demonstration of precise knowledge such as the following. Patient identifies 3 significant side effects of prescribed medication. Patient recognizes dangerous drug-drug and drug-food interactions for prescribed medications. Patient correctly identifies time of day and dose for each prescribed medication. For therapy groups, the expected outcomes will focus more on insights, behavior changes, and reduction in symptoms. For example, in an alcohol treatment group, an expected outcome might be that the patient develops insight into the connection between drinking and negative consequences. An expected behavioral outcome would be abstinence from alcohol use. In groups that focus primarily on emotional issues such as depression or anxiety, you can use standardized symptom surveys to measure symptom reduction as an outcome of group participation. Key points to remember. A group format has advantages over individual therapy, including cost savings, increased feedback, an opportunity to practice new skills in a relatively safe environment, mutual learning, and instilling a sense of belonging. Yalom's therapeutic factors that operate in groups can lead to therapeutic change for members. Groups develop through predictable phases over time: planning phase, orientation phase, working phase, and termination phase. Group leaders need to use specific skills depending upon the phase the group is in. For a group to continue and be productive, members must fulfill specific functions known as task or maintenance roles. Individual roles are not productive and are based on individual personalities and needs. Nurse leaders should reinforce productive group roles and confront individual roles. Clinical supervision is important so that group leaders can analyze group interactions and characteristics, as well as leadership techniques. Nurses have many opportunities to lead or co-lead therapeutic groups both in the hospital and community settings. Psychoeducational groups, health teaching groups, and support groups are often led by registered nurses. Advanced practice registered nurses may lead psychotherapy groups based on various theoretical models. Challenging member behaviors such as monopolizing, silence, complaining, or demoralizing can be especially difficult. A variety of interventions are recommended to minimize the disruption to the group and maximize the insight to the patient who is engaging in these behaviors. Critical thinking. 1. You are automatically a part of several groups during nursing education, your large cohort and smaller course and clinical practica groups. Review. Table 34.3 and think about your position and ways you tend to participate in your current groups at school. A. Which task role do you assume in your groups? B. Which maintenance role do you assume? C. Which individual group role is yours? D. In your class groups in general, how would you characterize the norms? 2. While participating in your nursing education groups, you have surely noticed that some groups function better than others. Think about your current or past clinical group and consider the following questions. A. How would you describe the dynamics of the group? B. Which overall leadership styles have your instructors modeled? C. Were group members well prepared to participate in the class group sessions? If no, how did this affect the dynamic of the group? D. How did the group leader handle group monopolization, side conversations, or distraction? Chapter review. Questions. 1. Which outcome would be appropriate for a group session on medication education? Select all that apply. A. Patient will identify 3 side effects of prescribed medication. B. Patient will verbalize the purpose of taking the medication. C. Patient will acknowledge and accept the financial cost of prescribed medications. D. Patient will correctly identify time of day and dose for each prescribed medication. E. Patient will list 2 dangerous drug and drug-food interactions for prescribed medications. 2. What question by the nurse leader is helpful in managing a monopolizing member of a group? A. You seem angry. Is there something you want to discuss with the group? B. Would it be helpful if you had time to think about the question? C. Would you tell us about experiences that have frightened you? D. Who else would like to share feelings about this issue? 3. What advantages does group therapy have over those of individual therapy? Select all that apply. A. Groups are less expensive than one-to-one therapy. B. Groups provide an opportunity to learn from others. C. Groups are homogeneous in composition. D. Feedback is available from the group leader and group members. E. Interpersonal skills can be practiced in a safe environment. 4. What group would benefit most from a laissez-faire leader? A. Art group. B. Grief group. C. Social skills group. D. Anger management group. 5. The nurse tells group members that they will be working on expressing conflicts during the current group session. Which phase of group development is represented? A. Planning formation phase. B. Orientation phase. C. Working phase. D. Termination phase. 6. Group dynamics can vary widely and at times members are capable of disrupting the group process. Which of the following participant traits may indicate a need for additional support for a new nurse facilitator? Select all that apply. A. A member with paranoid delusions. B. A quietly tearful participant expressing suicidal thoughts. C. An angry woman who raises her voice. D. A calm but ineffective communicator. 7. The nurse is caring for 4 patients. Which patients would not be appropriate to consider for inpatient group therapy? Select all that apply. The patient who A. Has limited financial and social resources. B. Is experiencing acute mania. C. Has few friends on the unit. D. Is preparing for discharge tomorrow. E. Does not speak up often, yet listens to others. 8. Group members are having difficulty deciding what topic to cover in today's session. Which nurse leader response reflects autocratic leadership? A. We are talking about fear of rejection today. B. Let's go around the room and make suggestions for today's topic. C. I will let you come to a conclusion together about what to talk about. D. I'll work with you to find a suitable topic for today. 9. A patient continues to dominate the group conversation despite having been asked to allow others to speak. What is the most appropriate group leader response? A. You are monopolizing the conversation. B. When you talk constantly, it makes everyone feel angry. C. You are supposed to allow others to talk also. D. When you speak out of turn, I am concerned that others cannot participate equally. 10. The nurse is planning care, which includes a dual diagnosis group. Which patient would be appropriate for this group? The patient with A. Depression and suicidal tendencies. B. Anxiety and frequent migraine headaches. C. Bipolar disorder and anorexia nervosa. D. Schizophrenia and alcohol abuse. Answers. 1. A, B, D, E. 2. D, 3. A, B, D, E. 4. 5, B, 6, A, B, 7,
Okay,
B, 8,
guys.
9,
Thank you so
B,
much
10,
for your
B.
time. Thank you.
Visit
Thank
the
you,
Evolve
thank you,
website
thank
for
you.
a post-test on the content in this chapter.
I'm going to do
http://evolve.elsevier.com/barcarolus.
I just read chapter 34, Therapeutic
References.
Groups.
American Nurses Association. Code of Ethics with
Just
Interpretive
pause
Statements.
here.
2015 retrieved from. http://nursingworld.org/documentvault/ethics.
Okay, guys, so I just read chapter 34, Therapeutic Groups. So now I'm just going to go over the questions. So number 1, which outcomes would be inappropriate for a group session on medication education? Number 1 says A, B, D, and E. I selected A, B, D, and E. Patient will identify 3 side effects of the prescribed medication. Patient will verbalize the purpose of taking the medication. Patient will correctly identify time of day and dose for each prescribed medication. And patient will list 2 dangerous drug and drug food interactions for prescribed medication. Question 2 states, what question by the nurse leader is helpful in managing and monopolizing a member of the group? 2 is D. Who else would like to share feelings about this issue? Number 3 says, what advantages does group therapy have over those of individual therapy? Question 3 says, the answer is A, B, D, and E. So groups are less expensive than one-to-one therapy. Groups provide an opportunity to learn from others. Feedback is available from the group leader and group members, and interpersonal skills can be practiced in a safe environment. A, B, D, and E. Number 4 says, what group would benefit from a laissez-faire leader? And I put A, art group. And just to emphasize and just to get better understanding, a laissez-faire leaders allow the group to behave in any way they choose and do not attempt to control the direction of the group. In a creative group, such as an art or horticulture group, the leader may choose a flexible laissez-faire style, directing minimal to allow for a variety of responses. Question 5 says, the nurse tells the group members that they will be working on expressing conflicts during the current group session. Which phase of the group development is represented? And that's question 5. Question 5 says B is going to be the orientation phase. Orientation phase, they're working on expressing conflict during the current group session. 6, group dynamics can vary widely, and at times members are capable of disrupting the group process. Which of the following participants' traits may indicate a need for additional support for a new nurse facilitator? And that's question 6 is going to be A and B. A member with paranoid delusions and a quietly tearful participant expressing suicidal thoughts. Number 7, the nurse is caring for 4 patients. Which patient would not be appropriate to consider for inpatient group therapy? Number 7 says B is experiencing acute mania. All right. 8 says group members are having difficulty deciding which topic to cover in today's session. Which nurse response reflects autocratic leadership? 8 is A. We're talking about the fear of rejection today. Number 9, a patient continues to dominate the group conversation despite having been asked to allow others to speak. What is the most appropriate group leader response? Number 9 is D. When you speak out of turn, I'm concerned that others cannot participate equally. And that response is a response for an appropriate group leader response. Number 10, the nurse is planning care, which includes a dual diagnosis group therapy. Which patient would be appropriate for this group? The answer is D. Schizophrenia and alcohol abuse. All right, guys. So thank you so much for reading with me. I completed chapter 9, and we also did chapter 34 today. Chapter 9 was therapeutic groups. No, chapter 9 was 34 was therapeutic groups. I think chapter, let me see here, guys. Give me a second. All right, chapter 34, therapeutic groups. Chapter 9, therapeutic communication. So Pardon me. So the next chapter that I'm going to be reading, I'm going to be going to chapter 11. Chapter 10 is stress response and stress management. But I'm going to be going over to chapter 11, which is childhood and neurodevelopmental disorders. So that is going to go over the attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It's going to go over resilience, temperament. It's going to go over childhood and adolescent psychiatric mental health. It's going to go over play therapy, mental status examination, teamwork, safety, communication disorders. It's going to go over mood disorders, tic disorders. It's going to review intellectual disability, specific learning disorders, implementation, evaluation, autism spectrum disorders, diagnosis, outcomes, implementations, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I'm also going to learn about psychopharmacology, evaluations, medication for aggressive behaviors. So that's going to be chapter 11. And I'm going to go on to chapter 12, schizophrenia and spectrum disorders. Chapter 13, I'm going to learn about bipolar and related disorders. Chapter 14 is depressive disorders. Chapter 15, I'm going to learn about anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorders. In chapter 16, I'm going to learn about trauma, stressors related, and dissociative disorders. So guys, I got a lot that I'm going to be learning in module 3. I completed module 1. I completed module 2. Now I'm going to be going over to module 3. Week 2 assignment due is May 28th at 3:59 p.m. Graded 2 quiz is going to be June 4th. So I'm on module 3 now, guys. So I'm skipping the stress. Probably going to read about stress. When I get some time, I'm going to read chapter 10. But my next chapter is going to be childhood and neurodevelopmental disorders. So I'm going to be reading right here, guys. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you all for taking out time to study with me today. I pray that you all were able to gain some understanding on the subject that you guys are learning. May you have active recall, may you be able to apply the skills that you learned, be able to identify what patients are going through, what they're dealing with, so that you'll be able to treat them correctly. And just making sure that you're working as a group, guys, making sure that you're using therapeutic communication, not being so intimate with the patient, but being more therapeutic with the patient, asking the right questions, doing more open-ended questions rather than closed-ended questions. Make sure you're rephrasing the way you're saying things. That's very, very essential to being able to build a relationship with the patient, to build trust. That nurse-patient relationship is very it helps in order for a patient to progress in their goals in order to be discharged. So I just want to say thank you all for joining my channel, studying with me on today, coming into this study environment, and just enlarging our capacity to gain more knowledge into intelligence and also understanding. So God, I just ask you to open up the doors, Jesus Christ, that need to be open right now, God, and close the doors that need to be closed, God. I pray, God, that those who enter into this channel, Father God, to study, Lord, that they'll be able to pass their test, God, that they'll be able to pass their NCLEX, God. I ask you, God, for this to be an environment of debt cancellation, Jesus Christ, God. Those who are going for a master's degree, bachelor degree, those who are going for a doctorate degree or a PhD, God, allow them to get educated and still be debt-free, Jesus Christ, God. Allow them to pass the MCAT, pass the boards, God, pass the NCLEX, Jesus Christ, God. Oh, God, bind up every delay, every hurdle, every weapon, every distraction, every disability, every slothfulness, laziness, being lethargic. Bind it up now in the name of Jesus Christ, God, and cast it away from Jesus Christ, God. God, I ask that those who enter into the study realm will be able to pass the test. They'll be able to have their debts canceled. They'll be able to increase in knowledge, and they'll be able to help save many lives. In Jesus' name. Thank you guys for joining my channel, and shalom.